Over the weekend, Sudan and South Sudan engaged in extensive talks on all aspects and fields of cooperation that saw the two countries agree to open their borders after 11 years. The official launch of the agreement will take place on the 1st of October. The borders were closed in 2011 when relations between the two countries deteriorated after South Sudan broke away following a long civil war, taking with it 3/4 of the country's oil. For some analysis, we're now joined by Dr. Jok Madut Jok, who's a professor of citizenship and public affairs at Syracuse University, which is in New York State in America. Thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you, sir. It's good to be here again.
11 years, borders closed. How significant then is this development?
This is an extremely exciting and long-awaited development, very significant indeed. There are some caveats to it. When the CPA, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, was signed between the then Sudan ruling party called the National Congress Party and Southern Sudanese revolutionary movement called the Sudan People's Liberation Movement, signed a peace agreement to end that war, then Africa's longest war. They paved the way for two fundamental understandings, though not written as such. One is that now that the peace agreement is going to pave the way for South Sudan to become an independent country, it is important to recognize that it's better to have two countries living side by side in harmony with each other and within themselves than one country torn apart by war. So that meant that when independence of South Sudan came in 2011, that understanding was expected to be in place, such that South Sudanese and Sudanese people can have what was described at the time as two countries, one people, meaning going back and forth. The second thing was that even as the borders were supposedly closed, this closure was more symbolic than reality. Goods still flowed to South Sudan, as South Sudan was a new country needing all kinds of material supplies, from food to construction material to army gadgets and so forth. So goods continued to flow mainly from Sudan to South Sudan, even with the existence of the Sudanese government having officially closed the border. This did not stop the flow of goods. And this tells you that when the Sudan government says they have closed the border, in essence, they have opened the border. When they say they have opened the border, in essence, the border had not even been closed to begin with. So going now on paper to say that the borders are open and that the trading and population movement and labor movement can now happen officially, this is a great news indeed, and it is giving credence to that earlier saying that two countries living side by side in harmony with each other. Otherwise, it was not going to be possible for Sudan to exist in the way that it was established as one country torn apart by war. So this is a gigantic movement, no doubt about it.
Do you think that this is a reflection on the new era in Sudan's politics in Khartoum? Because we've seen Sudan make many changes, its relations with other countries, including the US. Is this, do you think, something that has been made possible with the exiting of Omar al-Bashir?
No question about it. I think there is a new political climate, a political dispensation, if you wish, in Sudan. The agreement that I just talked to you about was done under President al-Bashir, who has long exited power in 2019. Under total duress, the people of Sudan did not want him anymore. It was dictatorial, kleptocratic, very corrupt. very vicious in abuse of its human rights. So al-Bashir has left. In fact, to the side, even in South Sudan, that al-Bashir had gone, because hanging over al-Bashir was this issue of human rights abuse and the ICC indictment. He was a wanted man for crimes in Darfur, crimes against humanity and human rights abuses. I must add that also, as the political transition happens in Sudan, such a momentous transition has not happened in South Sudan, with the exception that it is now the old South Sudan government which brokered a peace agreement in Sudan to allow for Darfur, for southern Blue Nile, for the Nuba Mountains to come into the fold of the new Sudan state. And so Juba is being seen favorably by the new government led by Prime Minister Dr. Hamdok. And as a result, the South Sudanese state has not changed as such in the same way that the Sudanese one has changed, but the relationships have definitely improved a great deal over South Sudan's help with brokering a peace agreement with the peripheries of the new Sudan. Now, there is another challenge, and that is about the political transition within South Sudan itself. As things change in Sudan towards democracy, things grow towards autocracy ever more within South Sudan. And I think there is definitely a situation that is being awaited in South Sudan, whether South Sudan will transition in the same way that Sudan has in order for such things like the border control, the dwell over the contested areas on the border, in order for them to be forged together by new leaders, a new government in Sudan, a new government in South Sudan, would probably push these agreements towards a much more sustainable progress. In the absence of the democratic transition in South Sudan, this could all actually fall apart. As we speak, South Sudanese are saying that they are actually rallying and organizing to stage civil disobedience and popular uprising against the government in Juba. This coming Monday, there is a planned protest. If this planned protest should lead to changes in government and the ousting of the current government, we might expect whatever agreement that is signed today between Juba and Khartoum might be renegotiated anew in the new dispensation.
All right, so a lot of contingent issues that need to be dealt with. You did hint on one issue, and I remember watching the long war that you talked about, Sudan and South Sudan. The border areas, there were a number of areas under dispute. Were they ever truly resolved, or is this something that continues to simmer?
Oh, they were never resolved, not by any long shot. You have the biggest contentious area is Abyei, which is inhabited by Dinka, which is the largest ethnic group in South Sudan. That Abyei administratively still falls within Sudan, and the people in Abyei still look towards the south as their country and want to take the land with them towards the south. There are 6 other areas that are contested. To this day, none of them has ever been resolved. And it seems like until some of the fundamental population movement issues of citizenship, issues of international deliberations on border areas are resolved or attended to at least, these border contests will remain a threat to the two countries living in harmony. And make no mistake about it, if South Sudan and Sudan are ever going to be threatened with war with each other, it is going to be these contested areas that are going to be a serious issue.
All right, so South Sudan still a political hot potato. Again, during the conflict, oil was another one of those contentious issues. In these two countries now living side by side, where does oil factor into the fortunes of both countries going forward?
I think oil is probably the biggest elephant in the room. When South Sudan, as you indicated in your opening remarks, became independent, it took with it what had been a huge resource for Sudan. oil is the biggest source of income for South Sudan as we speak. In fact, to the point where people are saying there is a Dutch disease going on in South Sudan, the hangover with oil, which has stifled the other sectors of the economy. But the problem with oil is that South Sudan is a landlocked country, as we all know, and in order to export its oil, it has entered an agreement with Sudan to keep transporting its oil through a pipeline, which was built with oil money during when the country was still one. And this pipeline runs a very long 1,500 kilometers all the way to Port Sudan on the Red Sea. If South Sudan does not have an alternate export route, it will still remain beholden to Sudan. And so South Sudan really doesn't have a great deal of leverage in negotiating the interstate relationship with Sudan until it has sorted out what it is going to do with its oil. Prospects of building a new pipeline to Kenya, through Kenya, prospects of building another one through Chad to Cameroon to Nigeria and so forth. All of these things are being discussed. Another one through Eritrea through Ethiopia to Djibouti. All these are very expensive projects, simply being talked about, but very, very difficult to realize. But until South Sudan has sorted out what it is going to do with its oil, either to keep it in the ground and invest in other sectors, or keep paying Sudan a very enormous amount of money per barrel in order for its oil to have passage to the Red Sea. And as a result, South Sudan is really independent politically, but not so independent economically.
All right, and that's where we'll leave it. Thank you so much indeed. Your insights always greatly appreciated on the program. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Jok Madut Jok.
Lovely. Great.
All right, so borders open, perhaps symbolically. There have been movements between Sudan and South Sudan over the years, as we just heard. And whilst it's a good thing and optimism should be there, again, caution, because there's so many still issues that were never quite resolved that perhaps still linger and need to be watched.